I'm whipping with Wendy, I'm whipping with Wendy. Okay? Yeah. Whipping with Wendy, I'm whipping with Wendy. Hey, whipping with Wendy, I'm whipping with Wendy. Okay? I'm whipping with Wendy. Okay? I'm whipping with Wendy K. Berries and cream, she love to bake. Any occasion you need a cake, gon' place your order and call the date. Don't worry now, she be right on the way. One taste, will leave a smile on your face. I swear that she gon' show you the way. When it come to dessert, she don't really play. Nah. Ay, whipping with Wendy, I'm whipping with Wendy. Okay, I'm whipping with Wendy. Okay, yeah. Whipping with Wendy, I'm whipping with Wendy. Ay, whipping with Wendy, I'm whipping with Wendy. Okay.
Hi, welcome back to Whipping It with Wendy K. This is our Mother's Day special. I have a special guest for everyone. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to put it on the table. We're going to talk about mental health issues. We're going to talk about postpartum issues, only because these are some of the things that are dear to my heart, and these are some of the things that I have experienced as I have grown up as a child from an adult. So, are you ready to meet our guest? Let me bring her in. Hey, Miss Helen Cryss, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am awesome over here. So, are you ready for this Mother's Day issue?
You know, I think I am. This is literally my first interview, so hey.
Woo! So we're going to have to do it right. Tell us about Helen Cryss. Who are you?
Well, I am, first off, I'm a mother. I am a God-fearing woman. I am a nurse. And I am also a talk show host.
What? Okay, so tell us about your talk show.
Well, I initially started my talk show. It's on right now. It's just on YouTube. It's something that I started after conversing with a few friends. You know, we will always have these conversations where we would talk about issues that the media, you know, is putting out there, but we always had a different perspective. It always seemed like that, you know, social media and people on social media, they jump to what the media expects for them to say. And for us, without trying to be too controversial, because of my time and what I do for a living, we want to address it from a different standpoint, but not only address it, but also possibly, you know, mention solutions to the problem, what the real problem was, and possible solutions to the problems. Even with that being said, even now I'm taking a back seat on that.
Okay.
Honing my craft a little better. Also, because I feel like I'm missing something. Because I feel like, you know, at this point, you know, after this last administration, you know, the social issues that we're experiencing, that I also want to add more positivity into it, because that's more what's needed. We know the problems, you know,
right.
Which is still important to address those problems and the solutions. But also I want to add more positivity into it, because I think that's what the spirit needs now. That's what we need now.
We do. And I read somewhere yesterday where it said, don't be like a sponge and absorb all of the negative energy around you. And I'm like, boy, that's a heavy subject. And it's hard to not absorb. It's hard to not become a part of what everyone is doing and saying, because it's around us every day. So
exactly.
I get it. And you have to tell us a little bit about your family, because I think you got some twin boys.
I do.
Okay. Look at you being a great mommy.
Mommy.
And then you have an older child, right?
Yes. So my oldest, Isaiah, he is 21. I had Isaiah
What?
right out of high school. I graduated in June, July. I was pregnant. Okay,
You ain't wasting no time.
no time, no time. Well, that is my little handsome young man. And I also at 35, much
Okay.
later. Um, I had twin boys, Josiah and Jayshawn, and they are now 5 years old.
Okay. Look at you being the
Yes.
great mommy.
And
So on
I love
Mother's
it. I love
Day,
it.
you are a mom of three. And I'm hoping that you're going to be able to give other moms out there some motivation and a push to help them moving forward. Only because we know, like you said, last year this time we was in the house, the kids was
Hmm.
running us crazy. We was like, we need an outlet, and now we are back out. Society is back open and running again. But I do think moms are still looking like what I do now. I've been in the house with my babies for a month. What do I do?
Wendy, you went blank.
Hold
Is
on.
that Wendy?
Yeah.
You went out.
Can you hear me?
I hear you now, but for some reason you
Okay.
went out. Okay.
All right. So let's jump into the meat of our subject. And just by the way, we went to the same high school.
Yes.
And some of the things that I learned about you over the years, I did not know. And I think the roles are reversed for you too. Like,
It
I feel
is.
like you knew I had a baby. I feel like you knew the baby
Mm-hmm.
passed, but
Yep.
you didn't know what was going on after that. So, for you, what are some of the things you have done from having your first child at a young age up into having the twins at a more mature age and mature person? What are give us a little background about the experience, what you were thinking, how you was feeling about all of that.
Well, at 19, actually, I got pregnant at 18. I was in the church with my grandparents. I actually tried to hide it. But some older people, they know everything. You can't hide nothing from them. So when I had my son at 19, my grandmother, who I love dearly, she was like a mother to me. My paternal grandmother, she she sensed it. She knew it. And I called myself leaving out, going to stay with my sister because the shame of it all. I was always in the church. I was the one who always said yes to everything. The speeches, I did them. If you want something done in the church, you call Crystal. She was going to say yes. She wasn't going to give you an attitude or anything about it. So a lot of shame came with that. And my paternal grandmother, she took me in. She had me come back home. And it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. She gave me a lot of grace, and I think that's something we're lacking today. But she gave me a lot of grace with that situation. Now the church, I think a little, which I love my church, and I'm still a member there. And sometimes we have to forgive people for their ignorance.
Right.
I had to. We were it's Southern Baptist. I had to go in front of the church after I had my kids, admit I did wrong and all of that, which I never understood to this day. And at that time, the pastor, he came to me. He wasn't in agreement with it either, because he knew, this was between you and God, not God and the members of your church.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand some of the aspects of that as I've gotten older and I've grown a little bit in Christ. Now I don't think nobody should ever go before a church to say, I've sinned, I've done this, because come on, let's just be real about it. That's between you and God. You go before God, you ask God for forgiveness, you keep it moving, But I do understand the aspects of, not being on the choir, showcasing that as a, unmarried, pregnant teenager, and not to say it's shameful, but you have to represent, the right way to live, which a lot of people don't anyway. But
Yeah.
I do understand. certain
And just to
aspects of that.
interject, I was AME, so I was completely opposite. I was pregnant at 16. I didn't have to go before the church, but the members in the church made, because they were family, and we grew up in a small community, but they were family. So they made you feel like you have created the largest sin in the world. And I get, as a 16-year-old, you like, okay, my first hurdle is, like you said, telling your grandmother, look, I'm pregnant, because mine was sitting there at the doctor's office and telling the doctor, and the doctor's going, well, you're pregnant. I'm like, yeah. And then he was like, well, we're going to have to tell your mama. And I'm like, no, 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 we can't tell my mama. And I felt like they was about to just drop the hammer on me. And my mama came in, and my mama said, you laid on your back. You made this baby. You're going to have this baby. You're not giving it up for adoption. You are not going to get an abortion. And I don't know if you felt like I felt at that moment, but I felt like, okay, you're not mad, but are you ashamed of my situation? Because I was pregnant. Did you kind of feel ashamed as well, or how did you feel?
I think I mentioned my grandmother and my dad, because at the time that's who I was with. I think they felt a little shame, especially grandmother, because she always bragged on me. Grandma was always, Crystal doing this and she's doing that. And so now you got to say Crystal's pregnant, And so I think grandmother would have felt a little shame too, which is understandable for me, because if you feel like you raised somebody right and you have so much, faith in them, and let's just be real about it. It can be a little bit disappointing to them too,
Right.
for what you did, because grandma didn't know I was out there like that. She didn't know. She didn't know I was doing anything. I'm a virgin to them.
Right.
I'm a virgin.
Right.
So because everything I did was sneaky. That's why it's not good to be sneaky, because it's going to catch up with you one way or the other.
And those were their words exactly, right?
Yes. And so I think she felt shame, which is truly understandable. Even when I talk about the church, and don't get me wrong, I didn't have like what you had with the members. My church members were very supportive. It's only a select few, I think, that encourage the fact that me getting up there and admitting what I've done wrong. Overall, that's why I absolutely love my church family. They were all very supportive. And when Isaiah came, I got homemade blankets from the older people in the church, the mothers in the church, so many different people. Just like I can name all of them. A lot of them have passed on and gone now, because they were like my grandmother's age, if not older. They were very supportive.
Right.
And I truly, truly thank God for such a loving church family. That love really helped me. It did.
Right. And see, for me, I stopped going back to the church. Like, I feel so weird even when I go to the church now. I just feel like I'm just not welcomed, if that's, an okay feeling. But that's how I feel. Moving on to now.
Well, let me tell you this. You want to go to a church, you can come to mine. If you ever come back home,
I might have to take that option up, because
Baptist Church, Prosperity. I love my church family.
I do have my church here in Charleston, and I felt at home with them when I got there. And I feel like anything, and it is a Southern Baptist church as well, but I feel like if anything I'm going through, my pastor is not that straightforward. We're going by the book. He is so laid back, until I feel like if we had a barbecue, I could just talk to him about anything, and he gonna give you the most advice, and it's just gonna be like from his heart. But he gonna love me, and he gonna tell me what he really feel. and I can choose what I'm gonna do with it from there. And you don't always have those pastors like that.
Right.
So
Right.
we're gonna come back to this church issue because it's still part of this topic that we're talking about.
Okay.
So as your son was growing up, because you only had the one, right?
Yeah.
As your son is growing up, of the things you endured as a mom, were you married? Were you single? Like, what were some of the things that you faced? Because I felt like I didn't get to face those issues. So what did you get to experience as your son was, growing up?
Well, as he was growing up, so was I.
Right.
Just to be honest with you, I got a job because I said I never wanted to stay at home. I didn't want to be that mother on welfare, food stamps. So I'm going to work. I'm going to work full time. And that's what I did. I worked full time for like 4 years, similar to like a CNA type job. I did a stint in law enforcement. I did as a detention officer. And here's the kicker: I went to police academy. I failed out, right, because I couldn't shoot worth of crap, and I couldn't drive. And the crazy part is, right? So I aced all the tests, like literally, like
of course,
100s, 99s on all the tests. I had the knowledge. You could ask me something about the law. I had it down packed, but I couldn't shoot worth of crap. And then when I finally learned how to shoot while I was at the police academy, I failed the driving test. So I had the option of going back, but I never did. I'm like, this is not for me, because when you got something going on, I don't want to be out in the streets patrolling. I want to be at home with my family and making sure my family's safe. So I went back to my first love, which was nursing.
Okay.
I took nursing classes in high school, but I wasn't mature enough to handle it at that time. But I just went back to my first love, nursing, and that's where I got my degree in nursing, and I'm currently advancing that degree now. Okay. So I should, Lord's will, I have my master's coming up soon, in a few months. So, but it was a struggle. So trying to raise him, I was only focused on making it, trying to make it. And that was hard at times, because you're 19, you out here in these streets and you don't know nothing. You think you do, but you don't know nothing. Right. So, and as he got older, I got married. Since then, I've divorced. But it was good. It was good. The partnership was good. I never talked down about that. Right. He became a father to my son, even though he wasn't. Right. So, I mean, overall, life was good. God's grace and mercy, I'm telling you. I didn't deserve a lot of things that I went through. I don't deserve a lot of things that I've gained. But because his grace and mercy, I got it,
And those was life lessons that you went through at the time, because for me, I wasn't married when I had my daughter, but I was like, I don't want to have another child and not be married. I want to have a partner to help me raise my child. Right. And I looked at it as, you know what? Yeah, my daughter's father was there, but I was really there alone, mentally, physically, because yes, he was there, but he wasn't there when I felt like I needed him. So, I get it. Okay, so now we at these little twin boys, because you done been super mommy for the last few years. So
I know.
How did you get to the twin boys?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Even out.
How did you get to the twin boys? Like, what happened there? You don't got to give us the full backstory now. You can just try to tell us.
I say my boys were my surprise blessings. Okay. They were my surprise blessings. And with that, now, honestly, this pregnancy and having them was more challenging. And I'm thinking it because of the hormones also, but I had a lot going on prior to, like before I had my boys. And again, I tell my sad stories, not for pity, because God gave me the strength to get up out of there. It's to show that you can come through a lot.
Right.
You can make it through anything,
Right.
with the right resources and the Lord.
Yes. Yes.
So, with my twin boys, and just to give a precursor, my boys, in April of that year, I lost my grandmother, that paternal grandmother that always bragged on me.
Mm-hmm.
I lost her. July, I lost my dad, which we got really close after I became adult. Like we lived with him before, but we never had that relationship.
Right.
So I don't think we never understood each other. As a teenager, I was horrible.
I think we all were.
But I mean, the church didn't know, but I was. And plus, we had a lot of things he didn't understand, because he's a man. It's hard to understand. Trying to raise a child, let alone a girl.
Right.
So a lot he didn't understand, and a lot I didn't understand. But anyway, in July, I lost my dad.
Mm.
Which was like at that point one of my best friends, because we would text every morning 6:30. Hey, baby girl. I was always baby girl to him, so that was a huge loss. Because now, who baby girl, I don't belong to nobody now. Because now you don't have any parents, you don't belong to anybody,
Yeah,
and so that was
long, but it's hard
yeah,
to understand.
yeah, but it was hard to understand, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so a week later, on a Friday, I find out I'm pregnant. So
did you
April,
cry so hard?
Oh man, I have been crying. They just added on to it, right? It was like, oh my God, because first you have to think about, you just lost your grandmother in April, your dad in July, same year. A week later, now you find out you're pregnant. Okay. And again, surprise blessings.
Mm-hmm.
So with them, it was a bit challenging, because I feel like I had a lot of grieving I was still doing from my grandmother and my dad, and now you're dealing with pregnancy and hormones and all of that. I even had a close friend tell me, Crystal, you're gonna end up going through postpartum. He was a counselor. And I'm like, oh, I told him the dirt. I told him, like, why don't you ever speak that on me? I mean, because remind you, these emotions are running high. So I told him the dirt, but he was speaking truth. I went through, and I call it undiagnosed, because as a nurse, intellectually, I was there. I knew what the signs were, but for some reason in our environment around us, we don't understand what that is. And if you start to really look at a lot of things in our community, you notice when you have people saying, my baby mama, she's crazy, they don't understand that, okay, she may be going through postpartum. They never say that, ever. And so at that time, the people I was around was ignorant to that. A lot of people thought it was excuses, because I didn't want to do this and I didn't want to do that. And in all honesty, I was textbook case. Minor case, thank God for that, because I never thought about harming myself or harming my children. It was more of an obligation. And when I thought about different things, or if I addressed issues, it was all emotions. It was all not thinking logically about a lot of things at home. I was functional because I went back and forth to work, because I had to carry that. I had a thing of pride about me. I was very prideful. And I think that also, when I was going through that stage, the postpartum depression, that pride was still intact a little bit. So when I went out, I had to show that I'm strong, I'm this, and not telling anybody that when I drive on the road, I don't care if I hit a little gravel or anything, that I tensed up so bad and I was scared I was going to wreck and fly off the road every single time. I never really told anybody that. I didn't tell anybody that. I can remember things. I forgot a lot. And it came off as if I didn't want to do things to the people around me. Because Isaiah was a teenager at that time. So I'm dealing with all that. And again, the people who were around, they were ignorant to it. They didn't understand. Only thing they knew, I had a nasty attitude. I was mean to them. And again, I think a lack of ignorance and my pride stopped me, because even though I would go to the doctors, they would have me fill these forms out. Are you sad? Are you such and such? Are you this? Are you that? And I checked no every time. No, 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 no. So they never knew what was going on with me, because it's pride. I didn't admit to it, and I believe. I just think also, which is another topic altogether, I think that we need to start approaching postpartum and how to recognize that
Right.
in a different way when you have those doctor's visits. Because checking off a little piece of paper is just get it out of the way, so the
Right.
doctor can say that they're assessed for that.
Right.
I think that we need to start focusing more on just having a conversation either with your doctor or a required mandate where you have to go see a psychologist, as soon as you have your child, just to have an assessment, an evaluation.
Right.
Because I think I am not the only one who experienced that.
Right. I
And I
experienced
think,
it too, but I didn't know
yes,
what it was. I
yeah,
thought
you
it
did
was
not realize.
grieving, but after, talking to my sister for a while, I was like, you know what? I think I went through grief and postpartum at the same
Mm-hmm.
time,
Yep. Yep.
and nobody was there to help me. They were pretty much like you, get back to work, go back to school, make
Mm-hmm.
things happen,
Mm-hmm.
and just keep moving forward with your life. And just back on the issue of, like you said, you was nasty, you was mean to people. Girl, I could tell you some stories. People would come up to me, they may ask me a simple question. I'd be like, well, blah, 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 blah. And I walk off. I really didn't care what you had to say, didn't care what,
Mm-hmm.
the feedback. And I think
Mm-hmm.
after a while, I had to go in my bubble and reassess myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like you said, we don't know we're going through postpartum. If somebody was there to educate us, we would have known.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, and see, and this is me and all my pride. Wendy, I knew it. I did. I was textbook case. I even mentioned it before, but the people that I mentioned it to, and I had other resources. I had better resources to contact, but the person I mentioned it to, they was like, you just saying that. It's just an excuse for you to act the way you're acting,
Right.
because they didn't understand. They didn't even
Right.
understand what it was.
Right.
And so, but I knew it. But
Right.
again, when you're going through postpartum, you're not thinking logically.
Right.
And that was a hit for me because, again, I've always been that strong-willed, strong-minded person. And for me to lose my mind, that was challenging. I never thought I would like literally lose my mind. And that's what happened. That's what I felt that happened to me.
Hey, sorry, I don't know what happened. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. But we were talking about you was being that strong-willed, strong-minded type of person dealing with life,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
you're
and
not
so,
telling people.
because to me at that time, even though I was educated and knew about it, it was a weakness.
Hmm.
It was a weakness, and I didn't feel comfortable telling the world, you going through postpartum. You strong
Hmm.
as you are,
Yep.
you can do all this by yourself, and you did all this, you accomplished all this, and not you. You know, and so that was another thing that contributed to me not, you know, focusing more on the issue, trying to get it, help for that. And again, I was educated. I knew what it was. I was textbook case.
Right.
So, but it's just I think a lot. We have a lot to do. We have a lot of growing to do in the healthcare. We have a lot of growing to do when it comes to mental health in our communities.
Yes. And let's
All
talk
around.
about that too, because mental health is a major issue that people deal with all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you I think in the Black communities with mental health is pushed under the rug
Mm-hmm.
because people don't want to address it. They don't want to deal with it. And you'll be dealing with stuff internally and you don't express how you feel externally. And it's hard because you're holding everything inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think for us, what makes it even harder because not only do we as a community, label it as we straight up determined as being crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not only do we do that, but when we are experiencing episodes and we are going through different situations, we have others, and let's just be honest, not just law enforcement, but a lot of other people. What's the word I'm looking for? So basically, the community and society look at us. They don't look at us as having mental health issues.
Right.
They look at us as criminals when we go through things.
Right.
And we have a
Right.
breakdown. We go to
Right.
jail. We don't go to the psych ward. We don't go to the psych hospitals.
Right.
A lot
Right.
of us are sent to jail, and
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 that
that's a double whammy on
right.
us.
Right.
Because we're dealing with ourselves. We're trying to deal with mental health within our community, but now also society looks at us in a different way. They
Right.
don't
Right.
say, she needs help. She has mental issues.
Right.
For other races, that's what you hear a lot. But for us, that's a criminal.
Right.
So we're catching it from everywhere
Right. Right.
in regards to mental health. And again, it's not addressed.
Right. And I think for me, and I've just seen it because I worked for mental health for when I worked at Department of Health and Human Services. And a lot of the billing was from people that went to jail, they got out, they did not get the help when they were in prison,
Mm-hmm.
but they came out, they received the help that they needed, they ended up going back to prison, their medication stopped, they didn't have what they needed. So they were, like you said, labeled as prisoners and
Mm-hmm.
criminals and all these other titles. And if they would just address that mental health issue,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
could eliminate a lot of that.
Right.
And that's just our society, and it's a sad society to have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you still have the judging on top of that from other people, even if you have a special needs child. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that child is crazy. Oh, she got a crazy child versus this child is special needs, but this child is really smart in, or this child
Right.
can do really well and exceed in. And those are things that I want to say back in the day, our grandparents and great grandparents, they had to push under the rug because they didn't have the right insurance, the right money
Mm-hmm.
and mental needs that they needed in order to help build a person and take them to the doctor and pay for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. And it's hard. I don't know if you knew, but for me, I tried to commit suicide when I was in high
Wow.
school. And
I had no idea.
Yeah, that was and you know, for me, I didn't want to tell nobody because I didn't want nobody to judge me. I ended up getting in a fight in high school. I fought a boy. My mama didn't believe it because when they called her home, they told my mom, they was like, your daughter just got in a fight, and she was in a fight with a boy. My mom was like, I don't believe you. You got to send me proof before I can come pick her up because you telling the story. They sent my mama the proof. My mama came and picked me up, and it was just like, okay, you got in a fight, let's deal with it. You know, that's how my mama responded. But when I got back to school, everybody was like, Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson. And I'm like, I didn't do nothing. I was just fighting him because he was there and I had to deal with the issue. But I took all that inside internally. And plus, I had issues dealing at home that I didn't want nobody to know, that I didn't want to talk about. So I didn't really express it. And everybody may not remember in high school, but they may have thought that I was just, you know, happy-go-lucky. I was good and blah, blah, blah. But I really didn't feel like that. I felt like I was alone, like I was by myself.
Oh, yeah. I understand that feeling. Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't really tell anybody how I felt because I didn't feel like they would believe me because of who my mom was, who my dad was. You know, I just felt like it was an issue that I had to push under the rug. In my case, and I'm not sure how you handled your mental illness, but in my case, I went to the psychiatric ward. I stayed there, and I was in high school. I stayed there for some years. Not years, I'm sorry, for some weeks. And when I got out, I had to return back to school like nothing happened. So that's another blow that I took on. I took on, why haven't you been here? I took on, you haven't completed your work. I took on the faces of how the administration was looking at me. They're not paying attention to it, but I felt it. And then I really tried to commit suicide 2 more times.
Wow.
And it was just, for me, I just felt alone. I felt like nobody understood. Nobody was able to help me. I was just out here by myself as a young age. And I feel like that led me to getting pregnant, having my daughter. And then I lost her again. And I went through another area of depression. But you don't talk, you know, you can't talk about it because one, most parents, I'm going to go talk to the preacher at the church. The preacher at the church, he really or she isn't a psychologist or psychiatrist. They just going to tell you what they believe and what the Bible has said. And then tell you to go home and deal with your child accordingly versus let's get some help for this child. And I think we need more mental health programs inside of our churches and inside of our communities.
Yes, inside of churches and schools too.
Right.
Because a lot of what we do is shown when we go out in public, you know. But it's just so much in mental health. A lot of times, even as a child, Wendy, you can't articulate truly how you feel.
Right.
And that contributes to everything. If I can't express how I feel, if I can't tell you or articulate what's really going on with me mentally, then what am I going to do? I'm going to fight. And a lot of people, you know, again, they label that as just being bad, you know. And I know with my history, and a lot of people, you know, don't know. And again, we went to school together, and you had no idea a lot of the things I'm about to tell you now. My mom died at 4 months. You know, my brother
being born 4 months of you being born.
I was 4 months old, and my mom passed away. My brother Jamie may have just turned 1 or 2 at that time, and I had older sisters, who still remember our mom. But Jamie and I, we don't remember anything.
Right.
But again, my mom passed when I was 4 months, and my maternal, grandparents, they got us and they took over. They went to court, and when I say they treated us as if we were theirs, that's exactly what they did. But sadly, then when I was 10, grandmother passed away. That was my mom. That's the only mom I knew. And that's when the fighting started for me. And if you would talk to my older cousins, I'm pretty sure I fought every last one of them.
Because you was releasing all that anger.
Oh, honey, when I tell you I fought like crazy. And they'll tell you she's bad. She was just bad, which again, I think a lot of them were at fault too. They were old enough to know better.
Right.
And so that added on to my drama, my trauma with all that. At 13, the man that I looked at, even though I had my dad, he was in the picture, but he wasn't daddy to me at that time. Right. My grandfather was.
Right.
And like he was my protector, and I knew I was loved. Granddaddy, he had a way about him. I was spoiled. He spoiled me too. That's another thing. He spoiled the crap out of me. But Granddaddy was my dad. At 13, Granddaddy had a stroke.
Oh wow.
He eventually had to go to the nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a blow.
Wow.
And on top of that, I had older cousins saying it's your fault because you're so bad. Mm-hmm. They knew better.
Right.
They knew better. But it was just what they did.
Right.
And so I fought my way through that. I fought. Mm-hmm. And if you would talk to them now, they would say, I was bad. I was a bad kid. I was. But also, nobody was intelligent enough to realize that this girl need help.
Right.
Nobody really looked at my situation and said, okay, first she grew up without a mama. She didn't have a mama. Now, people that she called mom and dad, at 10, her other mama died.
Right.
13, her daddy going to the nursing home.
Oh,
he can't take care of her no more. So now I stayed with my aunt and my cousin for a while. That didn't work out. Again, talk about my cousins. I love them to death now, and I forgive them. But they, it was mistreatment, to be honest with you. But they didn't see it. And I think even to this day, they don't see it like that. But they saw me being bad.
Right.
They never saw what they did to provoke me a lot of times, to pick on me and stuff, and how I would react out, because I fought.
Right.
They weren't arguing with me. I said a few words, then I'm fighting. I'm fighting everybody. I fought everybody in the house.
So with you acting out and you dealing with the grieving piece that nobody identified with you, how do you look for those signs in your children, even though they may not be dealing with grieving? But most children these days, they have bullying, they have other things, deciding whether to join a gang now, deciding if they're going to be with a popular group, deciding, how to make certain choices. How do you identify that with your children now, even though you went through that as a child?
Well, with my oldest, again, we was growing up together, but I opened communication up for him. We would sit down and like, Isaiah, it's time to talk. Let's talk about what's going on. And you would be amazed at the information that comes out of them once you sit down and talk. They truly tell you their feelings and what they're feeling like, and we would talk about it and we'll address a lot of issues. And now even with my boys, the twins, now they're 5. They start acting out. I'm like, okay, this is what's going on with them. So I kind of look past the behaviors. You have to learn how to look past the behaviors.
Right.
With certain things. And so that's how I deal with my kids. Communication is key.
Right.
Talking to your children. But again, I don't blame my family because again, I forgave and I love them to death. I mean, we're tight now. But it's just that level of ignorance within our community regarding mental health.
Right.
Anybody with, now would know, okay, she done lost her mom, she lost her grandmama, her daddy. Somebody would have sought, counseling or something for me. But nobody thought about it that way. They only looked at me as being bad. She's fighting, she's bad. She just bad. She's just bad. That's all he said. That's all I heard, growing up. I don't like that bad word,
Right.
I never hear my kids say, I'll joke around with my family, when I talk about my boys, but I would never let them hear me say it.
Right.
That they're bad.
Right.
Because that's not the case, but that's what I was labeled as. I was bad. And even like moving from there to my paternal, my dad and my grandmother, some of that carried over.
Right.
That aggression carried over because I'm like, you ain't my daddy. My granddad was my daddy,
Right.
He didn't know how to respond to that.
Right. And those are the things that I think we as women, we have to start small, in smaller numbers, and create the supports in the groups to build and make larger numbers. With that being said, what would be some suggestions or some things as a parent and as that little girl growing up that you would offer to anyone that's probably dealing with these signs now that they're not really talking about, but they're dealing with them internally?
For children, the advice I would give, if your parents can't listen, they don't understand, you have guidance counselors at school. Talk with your counselors at school and tell them what you need, tell them how you're feeling.
Right.
As far as the parents and the adults around those kids, seek help for them, seek counseling. That doesn't mean that they're crazy. It's not going to make you look bad. A lot of times I think, again, the family feel like they'll deal with shame. They're ashamed more than the children are. And so you got to just get rid of that. It's not, you shouldn't be ashamed to get help for your children. Because going to a mental health professional is the same thing as going to a physical doctor.
Right.
It's the same thing. So there should be no shame attached to it. But again, as a community, we have to start looking at that and approaching that situation in a different way.
Right.
That's the key to that. Like right now I have a therapist. I'll tell anybody I got a therapist. Yeah, I do.
Right.
Because I need to stay sane. I need to be able to function at home because I was always good on the outside.
Right.
That show, I was always good at putting on a show. But when the doors close, I need to be able to function.
Right. And to just talk about that too, growing up, I was told by one of my psychologists to start keeping a journal. And when I look back at that journal now, it was dark. And when I look back, mental health wise, I dealt with serious depression. Black, silver, white. Those was my three colors. And you don't catch me in black now as I don't wear all black, but I used to wear all black or all gray or all white because those was my depression colors. So if I had to wear all black, you're going to find some pop of color somewhere in that mix.
Somewhere.
But I have to tell people, I, Wendy K. Blair, I know when I am about to slip back into my depression mode. And when I slip in my depression mode, it's not good for anybody because I go hard on myself and I just go focused and I just bury myself in depression. And I vowed to myself I would never be depressed again. And I feel like that's how we're going to have to, in small numbers, build our communities and help bridge that mental health gap and that issue of talking with others.
And that's true. And also we have to be careful who we talk to.
Yes.
So you can look and discern how someone is going to look at you and how someone's going to judge you.
Right.
So you can't just go talking to anybody because somebody can take you deeper down, take you deeper into that depression stage.
Right.
But for me personally, it was a combination of professional help and my faith.
Right.
Because without that faith, I would have never sought professional help. you
Right.
know.
Right.
So when you talk about the churches, a lot of people down the churches because they don't do mental health. They can't teach you something they don't know.
Right.
But my faith and my trust in God guided me to in the right direction as far as to seek help. And a lot of
Right.
people don't have that. And so I think for me personally, and which may help a lot of other people, that is an important aspect too,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so a combination of professional and my spirituality guided me to where I am now. You
Right.
know, guided me to even now when I'm facing things, my faith
Right.
is that's my number one. That's my number one
Right.
source.
Right.
So, and I tell anybody, I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for God's grace and His mercy. You know, because
Right.
I didn't deserve it. I don't deserve it. You know, but He gave it to me. You know,
Right.
and with my faith, guided me to a therapist because God placed people in places, and that's why you know a lot of people. You'll hear a lot of pastors. Some pastors would say, you know, you ain't got to go to no pill. You ain't got to take no pill. You don't have to do this. Me not taking a pill when I was going through postpartum depression made it last 2 years instead of a few months.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know, so that's the difference. That's the
Yeah.
difference.
Right.
It's a combination of faith. It's not one or the other.
Right.
For me, it was a combination of both
Right.
because you have to have something internally that's going to guide you to the right in the right
Yeah.
direction. And my
Right.
faith guided me in the right direction. He makes psychologists.
Right.
He put them
And
there. He gave them a
they're
place.
there to help. Right.
That's right. That's why everybody has a calling, and
Right.
that's their calling. He
Right.
made therapists and counselors. That's their calling.
Right. And you have to
So,
vet these therapists that you are going to. You have to vet them because some will just give you medications and send you home, but some now, and I've had about 5, but one I truly enjoyed that therapist because she helped me identify the problem. She helped me figure
mhm,
out how I'm going to deal with the problem when it comes up again. And then she helped me to come out of the problem and then look back to say,
mhm,
okay, these are my triggers that's going to put me here. How am I going to be able to keep addressing those triggers as I'm moving forward? And for
right.
me, that has helped me to be a
Mhm.
better Wendy K. Blair.
And that's true with that. There was a study that showed that with our black men, when they go to the psychologist, the number one diagnosis is schizophrenia for black men. That's
Mm.
the number one diagnosis. The time is not taken to really evaluate our black men or anything. The number one diagnosis, 9 out of 10 times when a guy go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, diagnosis is schizophrenia for black men. And so you really do have to, you know, vet
Hmm.
the professionals and make sure they're really trying to help
Right.
and not to write a diagnosis down and send you on your way.
Right.
So, but again, all of what I've said today, all of what I've been through, again, it's not for pity because it's a story that I've overcome, more so a
Right.
testimony than anything.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I don't look at that like, oh, woe is me. I don't live that way. I
Right.
live that way because God got my head up, you know,
Yes.
and I let His light shine in me so I can go out and tell other people and help other people, not for
Right.
my pity, you know, that I don't need to be uplifted by man because you know that'll change in a snap of a finger.
Yep. So with that, look, you ended us on a high note. We're about to close out, but with that being said, one of my platforms is how do you become unstoppable with your gift? So tell us. We know that Helen Cryss is on a little small hiatus, but how are you becoming unstoppable with your gift?
I'm becoming unstoppable because I'm learning to more so than anything, especially with going through what I've gone through. I have been humbled, okay, and me being humbled, me trusting in God more so now than ever. That's how I am becoming unstoppable in my gifts. You know, He's given me visions as far as what my next steps are. He's given me signs and introducing me to people um, like Wendy K. Blair over again. um, to talk about issues that'll help his people,
Right.
to address those issues. So I'm becoming unstoppable through the grace of God. He guides me, he leads me, he is my strength, and that's how I am making it. And I am making it.
Right. Yes. And if we need to get in contact with you, or if they want to get in contact with you and say, hey, I can relate to your story, where or how can they be able to get in contact with you?
You can email me at helencrysstalkshow@gmail.com. It's
Okay.
HELENCRYSS talkshow@gmail.com. And also, if you want to see any episodes of my show, I am on YouTube at the Helen Cryss Show. I'm also on Anchor at the Helen Cryss Show. But again, that show, I'm taking a back seat for right now because I'm reevaluating a lot of what I'm doing with that show. But that's where you can see. If you want to watch a show or if you want to contact me, that's how you could contact me.
All right. So I'm gonna allow you to get back to these young men that you have going on in this world, because I'd be so proud when you be posting pictures like they're my kids. I'm like, oh
And you know what? When I get off, they're getting popsicles. They have been quiet. They have been good. You hear me? They are getting popsicles today.
girl, and every time I talk to you, like, I know we did a show a while back. We did a show and you was like, my boys is getting a reward for this. And I have a friend, and what she do is she write positive affirmations on her son's bathroom wall. And to hear that, it's like you're getting an award for doing good versus
Right.
getting that bad dictation of being bad. And they want that good because they know mommy's gonna give me something good.
Exactly.
Mommy's gonna speak good into me, and I'm gonna be powerful. So I'm hands up. Keep being a super mommy. I am proud of you. If you have not heard it, I am proud of you. I appreciate your story. And I am so glad that you agreed to come on to Whipping It with Wendy K. And I want to wish you a very, very happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome. Okay, you guys, we had an awesome episode for Mother's Day. If you have any questions, I'm going to drop some links in case you need to reach out to your mental health facilities. If you need to talk to someone, please say something. If you're feeling like you're going through a suicidal attempt, please call 911. Get help. Do not feel like you're going through this alone. It's okay to make mistakes, because guess what? When you make a mistake or you fail, whenever you do it again, you already know how and when to start over. I will see you later. Happy Mother's Day. And guess what? If you need to contact me, I'm going to drop my contact information right here for you.